Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to take the adjournment proceedings this evening to review a question and to hopefully get a better answer than the one I received back on November 30th of 2020. At that time, of course, being in calendar 2020, the question of extreme importance and urgency was whether the government was going to fulfill a commitment that the government of Canada made during the negotiations at COP15 in Paris. That commitment was to improve and enhance what's called an NDC in the Paris language, a nationally determined contribution, generally referred to as a target. We committed in Paris that in calendar 2020, that we would improve our target and do so again every 5 years thereafter. So when I asked the minister what the plans were to improve our target in 2020, I was disappointed that he didn't answer directly, but the answer is now very clear. The time has passed. We're in 2021. We have not changed our target. We have not met the commitment we made. In conversations with people around the minister's office, it was reported to me that, the department didn't think that commitment was legally binding, and other countries haven't done it either. I find both of those responses appalling. It is a commitment that we made. It was found, if you want to check, in paragraph 24 of the COP21 decision document, in which every country with a 2030 deadline for their first NDC was to improve their target in 2020. As to the idea that other countries haven't done it, 69 countries have, and of course it's only the countries that have 2030 deadlines. So here we are in 2021 with a target that is completely out of step with all of our G7 partners, with most of the industrialized world. We have one of the weakest targets in the world and the weakest of an industrialized country, except perhaps Saudi Arabia. We now have an opportunity to improve our record, and I want to shift gears here to the potential for getting things right. We are desperately close to being completely out of time in terms of carbon budgeting to avoid going above 1.5 degrees Celsius global average temperature increase, which is in fact the target. It is in the Paris Agreement, which is a legally binding document. 1.5 degrees must not be exceeded, but on almost every review of where we are on the science, it's almost impossible to hold to 1.5. In other words, the window on holding to our target will have closed and permanently well before 2030. So the opportunity that we have now to improve our target and do our fair share, which would be at least twice what we have now committed to do, that opportunity now comes up because President Biden has established a Climate Leaders Summit to take place on Earth Day, April 22nd, obviously, I'm sure by Zoom and virtually. That's when Canada really is going to have to step up and say that we're prepared to reduce our emissions by 60% below 2005 levels by 2030 and set in place a first milestone year under C12 of reductions that are firm by 2025 of at least 15%. That would begin to be clear commitment to the kind of action that we said we would undertake when we signed the Paris Agreement.
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages, and to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks to the honourable member for her remarks. And as the Government of Canada continues to protect and support Canadians through the COVID-19 pandemic, it is also important that the country look to the future. We can build back from the pandemic in a way that addresses climate change and delivers a strong, inclusive economy. And that is why on December 11th, 2020, the Government of Canada announced a healthy environment and a healthy economy, Canada's strengthened climate plan. It is a plan to achieve both our environmental and economic goals. It is a credible plan to exceed our 2030 greenhouse gas emissions target, and it is a cornerstone of the government's commitment to create over 1 million jobs, restoring employment to pre-pandemic levels. Canada's strengthened climate plan includes 64 new and strengthened measures and 15 billion, Madam Speaker, in new investments, bringing the government's total committed funding for climate change and clean growth to about 100 billion since 2017. The plan's 5 pillars are making the places Canadians live and gather more affordable by cutting energy waste, making clean, affordable transportation and power available in every community, continuing to ensure pollution isn't free and households get more money back, building Canada's green and clean industrial advantage, and embracing the power of nature to support healthier families and more resilient communities. Implementing Canada's Strengthened Climate Plan will enable Canada to exceed its current 2030 GHG target, but we won't stop there, Madam Speaker. We are committed to bringing forward an updated 2030 target this year. And while Canada's strengthened climate plan is focused primarily on additional steps that the federal government is taking, the Government of Canada is committed to working with provinces, territories, and Indigenous peoples to advance shared priorities that will further lower emissions, including on a regional and bilateral basis. The Government of Canada welcomes the return of the United States to the Paris Agreement. Canada and the U.S. agree that the climate crisis requires increased and bold ambition, as well as coordinated action in the lead up to the COP26 climate conference in November 2021. And Canada looks forward to cooperating with the U.S. on the global stage and in a bilateral context on numerous opportunities, including methane emissions, zero-emission vehicles, clean energy transmission, and attaining net zero emissions. Canada welcomes the U.S. plans to host a Climate Leaders Summit on Earth Day, April 22nd, as the Honourable Member mentioned, to build momentum towards COP26. With respect to the Honourable Member's point that Canada was required to improve its target within the 2020 calendar year, I would like to clarify that under the Paris Agreement, this requirement only applies to countries with 2025 targets. Canada and countless other countries set a 2030 target. Nevertheless, we intend to meet and exceed our Paris Agreement commitments and bring forward a new, more ambitious 2030 target this year. I would like to thank the Honourable Member's commitment to increase climate action. She knows that I'm a great admirer of her long-standing interest and advocacy on this issue, and I look forward to working with her and all House members to tackle climate change, which knows no borders.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and to my honourable friend from Winnipeg South, congratulations on his appointment to double duty and being Parliamentary Secretary for Environment and Climate Change. I'm afraid that whoever advised him that paragraph 24 only referred to countries with a 2025 end year, they were incorrect. I recommend they go back and read it. But here's the problem. We do not have a target that is remotely near what we committed to do in Paris. We committed to hold to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We're now on track to 3 to 5 degrees Celsius, and I hate to say this in a 30-second statement, but it couldn't be more serious. The scientists of the world are advising that we are coming very near the point where we will not be able to rescue human civilization from our own actions. This is not a time to be coasting and self-congratulating. Right now, the Prime Minister of this country is about to look very bad in comparison to Biden. We coasted looking good compared to Trump. Right now is the time for Canada to actually start taking climate emergency seriously.
The Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to assure the Honourable Member Canada remains committed to increasing our climate ambition. On November 19, 2020, our government tabled the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, which, if passed, would legally bind the government to a process to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. It would make our 2030 target legally binding and set 5-year emission reduction targets to 2050 to improve accountability and transparency. And I look forward to working with all parties to pass this important legislation and strengthen our 2030 target.